Hi, I'm Pat Keegan and welcome back to the DIY Home Build channel. In this segment of the video, we're going to be drilling the holes in the drawer fronts to receive these drawer pulls, and then we're going to mount the drawer fronts onto the drawer boxes. And let me just kind of walk you through the setup here real quick before we get started. And I'll start with the second step of the process first. What I've done is I've just gone ahead and made a quick little jig here out of a couple of pieces of solid wood with some pocket screws here to make this kind of letter L, if you will, to act as a support jig for putting the drawer fronts on. And the way this jig will work is once I've already measured over a half and down a half an inch, because that's going to be the offset. If you remember from the previous video, this opening is 10.5 inches wide, so my cabinet drawer fronts, my drawer fronts are going to be 11.5 inches wide because I want a half-inch overlap on each side. Similarly, I want a half-inch overlap of the bottom rail and a half-inch overlap of the top rail when the drawer is in place to give it as much stability as I can when the drawer gets closed. And so what I've done is I've gone ahead and measured, I built the L-jig and then measured over a half and down a half. And so when I end up installing, and I took one of the drawers out for some visibility that you'll see later, when I go ahead and start installing these drawer fronts, it's going to be real easy for me to just set them in. This acts as like a little ledge, kind of like when you're setting tile or doing something. And then I just push it all the way over so that it rests against this left style here, so to speak, of the jig. And then what I'll do is I have this little 1/8 inch spacer. I'll just put that on top and I'll set the next drawer front onto the drawer box, and I'll just keep repeating that process. And the whole time it makes it very easy because I don't have to hold anything or worry about something moving out of place. They're all going to be lined up perfectly with respect to the cabinet front. It's going to look really nice and straight. So that's how that process is going to go. But before I do that, I'm going to show you how we're going to drill out we're going to drill out the fronts to receive the cabinet pulls. There's a bunch of different ways you can do this. You can measure exactly, how far down and how far over, and you can try to figure it out that way. One of the things we use here is just a very simple jig. It's got a million holes in it so that you can for a variety of situations for installing not only the knobs inside the drawer fronts, but also the handles on the doors. If you want to install them on a door frame, you can use this jig as well. Unfortunately, although the jig has a lot of holes in it for a lot of different common settings, it's not sufficient by itself for this particular project. So we had to make in fact, this little shim in order to help us. So the other thing before we get started with that is what we realized, and this is just a part of custom cabinetry that you're going to run into, it's almost not how well you build the thing, it's how well you solve problems after the thing is delivered. So what we found out is that the hardware that was chosen was originally going to be placed on this middle field here that's inside the raised panel. And what we realized when we put it up here is that that handle sticks out about 1/4 of an inch on either side, and it just doesn't look very professional to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually mount this drawer pull in the center of the top rail of the drawer. And that's kind of how file drawers are done, actually, so that you don't have to bend all the way over to try to pull the drawer out. It's fairly handy. And it's not an uncommon look, and since this is the only bank of drawers that we're going to have in this kitchen, it's a reasonable solution to the problem. It just looks much better up here, I think, when you have them all aligned than it would to have this 1/4 of an inch sticking out on either side. I just don't think that looks very professional. So anyway, there's a bunch of different ways you can measure. I always recommend marking on the front and drilling through to the back. Although if you do have a piece of backer board like I have here, I have all of these drawers just kind of sitting on this half-inch piece of melamine, not melamine, MDF. So you can also then, if you want, you can mark with pencil on the back of the drawer. Nobody's going to see that because this back of the drawer front is going to rest against this drawer box and no one will see it. But anyway, so this is kind of the way I've done it. And the way you use this particular jig is it's got a slight plastic raised portion here that marks the exact center of the jig. And what you'll want to do is you'll want to measure the width of the drawer front, which I already know is 11.5 inches. And then you'll make a mark on the center of the workpiece, and then you'll just line up this center mark with the center mark that you line up here and hold it in place, and you can make your pencil marks to drill out, before you drill out your holes, and everything will be centered perfectly. The problem with this is these rails are 1 3/4 of an inch wide. They're not the standard 2 or 2 1/4 that you might find, so they're a little bit narrower. To get this same field in, we had to go a little bit narrower. Again, that's kind of custom work. So what I had to do is I created this 1/8 inch spacer that I showed you over here, and that's basically just going to go on the top like this, and then I'll make that just flush with the left edge of the front, and then set this thing, the jig here, so that it just aligns perfectly to exactly what I needed. So I measured the width of the drawer front, which is 11 1/4, and I also know that it's 7/8 of an inch to the center of that rail, and so that is what helped me determine which set of holes I'm going to use. So I just created this, you could do a giant 2-inch spacer if you want and put the thing way up here and use some holes down toward the middle. You can totally do that if you want. So anyway, I have a little center mark on this piece. All I do is I flush it up, I line up the center mark on this jig to that, and make my holes and go. So I'm going to do that for each of these 4 drawer fronts, and then we're going to drill them out. Now that I have each of the drawer fronts marked with the 2 holes that I need to drill in each one that are exactly 3 inches apart and stationed in the center of the drawer, because these are 3-inch drawer pulls. You can get wider ones or narrower ones, or just the knob too in the middle if you want. But then I'm just going to go ahead, I have my marks all marked, and I'm just going to drill these holes all the way through to receive the screws that are going to go in for these handles. Okay, now that I've got all of the drawer fronts drilled with the handles, again, sometimes you can do this process second if you want. I always do it first when I think that the drawer boxes are going to be a little close with tolerances, but there's nothing to say you can't attach all the drawer fronts first and then, attach the hardware second. That's perfectly okay. But in this case, I did it first because I was worried about the clearance I was going to have here. So anyway, there's again another dozen different ways to attach drawer fronts to the drawer boxes. What I would normally do here in the shop, if it wasn't for these videos, is I would pull out this drawer and this drawer. I would simply hold the drawer front in place against this jig, because this jig is really tight in place. And I would take a pneumatic nail gun with the 1/4 inch brads, 1 1/4 inch brads in there, and I would reach in the cabinet and I would just pin the brads to the drawer front so that it would hold. And then I would take it out and then drill my holes and attach the front that way. So, but the purpose of this video series, and I've been asked a few times about this in the comments that are below some of the videos, so I just take the time to reiterate that the purpose of these videos is to try to see if you can get more people who don't have thousands of dollars worth of tools at their disposal to be able to build very nice quality solid cabinets. And so I'm not going to assume that you have a $200 compressor and an assortment of nail guns. If you do have those things, that's great. You can just hold the drawer on here, take these drawers out, reach in, and at about a 30-degree angle or so, because remember, this field, you don't want to blow through this panel field, which is shallower and therefore thinner. So you want to aim on an angle so that you hit inside the meat of each of these stiles. So you could do that if you want. Just reach in and pin it a couple of times so that it holds, pull the drawer out, and then go ahead and put your screws in, and then you can break off those nails later. But the way we're going to do it here is just with a hot melt glue gun, which is again an inexpensive tool to do. And I'm going to do a quick demo before I actually do the drawer, just to show you how the process works. So the reality of what we do is, I've got this hot glue gun, heating up here, and right before this, let's just pretend that this is the back of our drawer. I'm just gonna put two little thin strips of glue on the back of the drawer front. I keep saying door, but it's drawer front, and then press those into place and hold. And actually, I don't even need to hold. I just need to push it there for a couple seconds. And imagine this is going to be the drawer front, so I'm going to just kind of squeeze it on there and hold it for just a couple seconds, and you can see already that it's strong enough to hold. Now, you don't want to pull it by that because you want the drawer front to stay on. You just are going to hold it like so. You're just going to make sure it's on by so, and then using your hands back behind the drawer box, you'll pull the drawer out and take the drawer out. But you can see that that's a pretty good hold on this. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take that drawer front now, the drawer box with the front on it, and you're going to flip it over, and then you're going to drill your holes, like I said, on an angle so that you get in here. Whenever you're drilling in a material like this, you always need a pilot hole. Drill that first. So we'll drill a shallow pilot hole, and then we'll put a screw in there to hold everything on, and then we'll be good. Then what we'll do is we'll take those screws out, because what inevitably happens is, and it's very tough to see this at the angle of the camera, but there's a very thin, you can see about a 32nd inch of a gap here, and that's because there's actually glue trapped between the back of the drawer front and the drawer box. So you don't want that glue kind of holding it up. I mean, I guess you could leave it there, but I'm not in the habit of leaving it there. It's just not thin enough for me to want to leave it there. So the easy thing to do is you just take a scraper, or this is called like a 5-in-1 tool or whatever. You just take a scraper and you pop the drawer off, just like so. And what ends up happening then is you're going to have a little bit of glue left on the wood, and usually a little bit of glue on here as well. But since this is pre-finished, just like the drawer fronts or the drawer boxes are pre-finished, it's going to come off of there with just to scrape it off. And then what you'll want to do is, kind of the same thing. Just take the scraper like so, and take the glue off. It comes off really, really easily. I say that usually. And then you're done. But now your screw holes are in there. So then I'm going to go ahead and just put the drawer back and then screw it in again, and it'll tighten everything up, and I won't need that gap. Now, it's a little bit of a laborious process, so there are other ways to do this, but this is, if you don't have the compressor or nail guns and all the fancy tools, this is a very easy way to put the drawer fronts on solid. It does take a little bit of time, but it's still a really good method to do it. So, I'm going to start with the first drawer front, and all I'm going to do is very quickly, a little bit of glue on there before it cools down, set it on, and hold it in place for a couple seconds, making sure that it's resting against this style here in this bottom rail. And then with both hands on the drawer box, I pull that out, and it's going to stay perfectly fine. So then what I'm going to do is remove the drawer, and what I'll need to do now that you can see is I'm going to drill holes. I'm going to drill 1, 2, 3, 4, but they've got to be on an angle so that they hit the meat of, ooh, tip my glue gun over, so that they're going to hit, they're going to be in the meat of this style here, and you can see it's on there very firmly, so it's not going to be a problem. And again, I just don't like that gap. I suppose you can leave the glue on there if you want to and just drill it in and everything. But since we have to take these off and all the hardware off again to restain or to stain and finish all the drawer fronts, it doesn't make any sense to leave the glue on there anyway. So that's the kind of the good thing about it. Of course, you could always stain and urethane your drawer fronts and then put them on too and leave the whole thing. I just don't choose to do that. So in any case, what I'll do is I'll get the drill set up, and then I'll show you how we drill for these. Okay, before I permanently attach the drawer fronts to the boxes, what I've done is I've created this jig by just ripping about 1 inch or 3/4 of an inch to 1 inch wide piece off the end of a or off the side of a you know, a 1x3 or something like that. And then what I did is I set the table saw at a 45-degree angle, and I just made a quick little bevel, which you can see here, a quick little bevel so that I can make sure that the holes that I'm going to drill stay on a 45-degree angle. In woodworking, it really is all about the jigs. The more jigs that you have to help create processes that are foolproof and fast, that keep you making the same repetitive process again and again with 100% accuracy, the better off you are. We've made a lot of jigs, little jigs, in this cabinet making episodes that we've had so far, and it's definitely very, very helpful. So again, what this is basically designed to do is it's going to go in the corner of the box like so, and I'm just going to take my drill, and I've already drilled through the face of this on the angle that I need, and then it's just going to go right at the right angle through the box. And I've actually adjusted the depth of this drill bit inside the chuck so that when this surface of the chuck here makes contact with the face of the jig that I've created, then it's going to be the right depth for the screw that I'm using. And I'll make sure that I'm not going to go through the front of the drawer front, which I do not want. So let me go ahead. I've drilled one hole already. Let me put the second one in, and I'll just show you. You just place that in there like so. So now that the second hole's drilled there, you can see, and I'm just going to go ahead now and put the screw in. I'll put this first one in here. Okay, and then the second one. These are just 1.25" close threaded screws because I'm going through 2 pieces of hardwood. These are maple here and cherry, so I want to keep the threads narrow rather than wide. Good. And you just put them in on the right angle. Now I'm going to put 2 more on the other side, but that's kind of boring to watch me do that. But then these are now permanently affixed and very, very strong because I'm going to have 2 screws on each side. But let's put this back, now that I've got 2 screws in there, let's put this back in the box and I'll show you the process for the next one. Okay, so very strong here. You can see, you can hear a little bit of rubbing. That's a good thing. That means it's just riding the edges of the jig and it's right in the right place. Now, to attach the next drawer, we're going to actually take this same spacer that I used back when we put on the actual hardware, and I'm just going to set that on top here. It's long enough so that it is kind of like the surfboard through the door routine up there, and I'm just going to set this on after I put the drawer box back, and I'm going to repeat the exact same process. I'm going to glue it, and then I'm going to drill those holes, and then I'm going to put the screws in, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to take this and put it on top of here. Well, let's just say that's about 1/8, and repeat this process again for this guy and again for the last one, and then the drawers will be fully installed like so, and they're going to look great. So alright, so what I'm going to do then is, I haven't finished drilling this one out. I'm going to drill this one out using the jig, driving those screws in on an angle. Then I'm going to come back and repeat the process for the next 3 drawers. And I'm going to just repeat the same process. I'm going to drill 1, 2, 3, 4 holes, sink the screws in, and repeat it again and again for the last ones. Well, there you have it. I've got all 4 screws drilled in through the front of the drawer box into the drawer front on all 4 drawers. And you can see with the jig removed, everything is aligned perfectly. There's an even 1/8 inch gap. You can make it a little smaller, but I don't trust wood movement that much, so I made it about 1/8 of an inch, and then all we have to do is take this hardware off and stain everything up, and we're ready to go. So I hope you enjoyed the last video segment on making this cabinet. It's been a kind of a long, involved process for making a bank of 4 drawers, but I think you have the fundamentals down, and I can't wait to see you guys try this for yourselves. In the next set of videos, we're going to be installing the doors and the drawer front and kind of a built-in sliding drawer, if you will, for the last 2 cabinets. And then with that, this series will be done. So I appreciate you watching. I appreciate your comments below. If you've got any questions, please feel free to ask, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks.